Ladies and gentlemen, I've got an amazing episode with Danielle Anderson, and we are so excited with this episode because this episode might be for you. It might be, it's really about how do you get into this game? And how do you get into it and take that leap into home ownership and do it in a way where your housing is not your biggest expense, which for most people it is. And Danielle walks us through not just the why behind why you should do that, but the how. She literally gives us the step-by-step process of how to get into the house hacking game. And I always talk about the house hacking game of like, house hacking is when you live there, it's co-living when you don't live there, and it's a pure investment, right? That's the difference in those terms and how I define them. And so this is a really beautiful episode. Now, you might be listening to this episode and you might be saying, well, Sam, I don't want to house hack anymore. I'm more about investing and making this into co-living. But then listen to this with a different ear and a different eye. This is maybe someone that you need to support. And I give an example on the show about how I've partnered with people who have gone out and bought primary residences, and I've partnered with them in a way where I've set them up. So I've kind of been the back end investor, and they go in and get a primary residence. That's the best loan you're ever going to be able to get. And Danielle will tell you all about this in the episode. And there's a really, maybe be thinking about that as you're listening to this. Another way that I would be thinking about this is maybe someone in your life needs to hear this. I believe we have a responsibility. If you're an investor, you have a responsibility to first learn and apply this to your life. And then the second responsibility you have, and I learned this from martial arts because this is one of the reasons martial arts has been passed down for thousands of years. And if you guys know my story, I came from a big martial arts background. But one of the reasons martial arts has been passed down for thousands of years is because people then turned around and they passed it on. They completed the circle of learning by teaching others. And so maybe you're listening to this, you're like, well, maybe it doesn't fully apply to you, but maybe you need to think of the top 3 people in your life that need to get into the real estate game. They're throwing their money away with rent. They could probably qualify for a loan, and they need to get into the game, right? And Danielle shows you exactly how to get into the game, to get off the fence, into the real estate game, into the investing game, into the hacking game, pure gold. And in essence, she'll share with you the lifestyle, how to use a strategy to live the lifestyle you want to live. So I'll stop yapping. Let's get into the episode. It's going to be a very direct question, but I want to kick off with this question. How much money did you make from house hacking last year, and how did you do it?
All right. So house hacking last year, I made around $45,000. And I call myself a hybrid host where I rent out my basement when I'm home. So I have a split level single family house, and I put up barn doors between the basement and the upstairs. And so the downstairs, think hotel room. It doesn't have a full kitchen. It just has, I don't even have a microwave down there. It just has a mini fridge, coffee pot, wine glasses, wine opener, a little living area, bathroom, bedroom, and that is essentially designed for short-term stays between 1 to 3 nights. And then when I'm home or when I'm away, so I can work anywhere. I'm a mortgage lender, and all of my business is via Zoom or phone calls. So for example, the last month in September, I traveled with a program called Remote Year, went down to Brazil, just was working and traveling down there. And when I travel, I rent out my entire 3-bed, 2-bath house, open the barn doors, and make additional funds, put all my stuff in an owner's closet, and just leave for the month or 3 months or however long I want to be gone, and run out my entire house when I'm gone. So I primarily live in Denver, but when I'm not, I take advantage of additional income, and really I just swap housing payments. So instead of traveling and having to pay for the travel and a house or an apartment from where I'm coming from, I have short-term rental guests cover that expense, and then allows me to live somewhere else.
That's pretty badass. I love this. This is super creative. And just like we were talking about with all those different platforms, it's just becoming more popular. People are willing to, it's not as weird to rent out someone's basement for a few nights or a week or something like that. It's just not as odd. So tell us, Danielle, why are you kind of all in on this model? What do you see? Is it in the marketplace? Because now you're not only doing it yourself, you've kind of made this niche for yourself, which I think is so cool, out of helping people get into this arrangement, right? So tell us a little bit about and we'll talk about this more towards the end too, about how you help people get into that and where people can reach you and all of that. But tell us a little bit about what you do to help people get into this arrangement, and even before that, tell us why is this so attractive to you? Like, obviously you're living it, you're experiencing it, and it's cool, and you get to travel the world, which like obviously sounds pretty cool. But like, why are you all in on this for other people?
So I think I'm in on this for other people because housing affordability is at an all-time low, which means that unaffordability is at an all-time high. It is hard for the average teacher, fireman, just average any day person to be able to afford to buy a house. So I want to flip the script and show them how it is possible to live and have all of the home ownership benefits while still living upstairs for the same price or less than what they're throwing away on rent every month. And so that's like my big passion of how do I show this? How do I show people how it's possible? And I truly believe that it is possible because I've been doing it since 2012 and I have clients that are doing it. So I'm sitting here going, you're scared of this $3,500 monthly payment or this $4,000 monthly payment when you're renting at $2,200. But let me show you how you take a single family house, divide it into two, put up a door, have a separate entrance so it's no different than living in an apartment.
Right.
And then your monthly payment is literally the same or less than what you've used to being paid, like what you're used to paying in rent. And so that's really my why of like how I got, so passionate into this, is really helping just average everyday people be able to afford to buy a home in this market. That's
so cool. And if you look at home ownership, like if you look at like the history of like land and home ownership, it was really only for like the elite, right? Like way back when. And then the American dream, everybody owns a home, everybody gets a home. And then like the American dream is kind of like faded a little bit. Like it's harder to own a home. Like a lot of millennials, like they don't think about owning a home. They're like, how can I rent for the cheapest possible, right? So you're bringing the American dream back on like own a home. There's a way to do it and not have a $4,500 a month payment. So tell me some of the what's like the most common objections you hear? So let's say you're out nomading it up. You're in Brazil. You just got back from Brazil for a few weeks, and you're like, hey guys, like you guys don't even have a home because you said they're your ideal client. You guys don't even have a home. You could own a home, get all the benefits of real estate. But like, what are some of the common objections you would hear to that? Like maybe one of the ones I think about is like, well, I don't have any money for a down payment, right? Like maybe talk us through that and any other objections you hear and kind of how you overcome those or how you kind of guide people to that light bulb moment that you've had for yourself.
Yeah, I'll start with the down payment because I do think that's and maybe not down payment, but just they don't think that they can qualify for as much as they can. So I would say the first thing that I talk to about down payment is there are programs available that like here in Colorado, we have something called CHAFA, which is Colorado Housing and Down Payment Assistance, that literally if they make under 166,000 or there's another program for under 188,000 in income, you can get 4% of your down payment covered for you. You only have to put 3% down. So essentially you're coming in with a 0 down payment and 1% towards closing costs. And you can walk in with the minimum borrower contribution of $1,000. Now you have to qualify for the program, and I'm sure my company wants me to put asterisks on that, but
yeah. That's pretty badass.
Yeah, it's amazing. And so many people are like, don't even realize that. So I am sitting here going, if you're renting, usually it's first month and last month rent plus a security deposit. So that could be like $6,000 to get into a rental. Exactly. Where essentially you can get into a house that's up to $700,000 for $1,000 if you meet those requirements, or if you don't meet those down payment assistance requirements, you only have to put 3% down. And I think there's a major misconception that you have to put 20% down, which is why I love working with primary residence house hackers more than investors too, of just like showing them, how it's possible and that you have these programs available to you to even just get into the game. And that's what I preach is like, don't try to like do long-term investing right now. Just like get into the game with your own monthly or your own primary residence. You're paying rent anyway. Let's just swap it out to a mortgage payment and then rinse and repeat, keep that house, rent it out, buy another one, and you can be a move up or, house hacker that is habitual about every 12 to 18 months buying a new house if that's your strategy for investing.
So freaking, yeah, because you can get one a year, right? Like legally you can get one a year.
Yeah.
As long as you live in the house for a year, that's the requirement. That's so cool. Are there other states that have, I don't know. I'm not an expert on these like down payment assistance programs, but that's like, it's not uncommon for states to have a program like that, right? Like I know you said Colorado has it, but do you know of other states that like have something like that?
I do lend in multiple states, but not every state, and I'm not savvy on every down payment assistance program, but I would say every state has a DPA program. And so you just need to talk to a lender, and a local lender or I can connect you with a lender that can help you identify, what those programs are to bridge that gap of, I don't think I have enough money saved up.
Maybe I should just start Googling like down payment assistance North Carolina. Like I'm sure that would come up with some different programs.
It's definitely there. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. That's crazy. Yeah. I think what's really interesting is this was also, I'm really passionate about the strategy too, Danielle, because this is how I bought my first, I think 6 homes. It was just like buy, move. And then like as I left it, it became, exactly what you're preaching to people, exactly what you're teaching to people. Let me share with you a strategy or a thought, and then you give me your opinion on it. So I'm going to kind of bridge the gap between like what you're passionate about and maybe who's listening to the show is like investors, right? People who want to,
Yep.
I've had to, and as a lender, you can probably speak to this even a little bit more. Mm-hmm. I had this guy who found a young man who was in the military and he didn't want to get the loans. And I think for some reason he couldn't get the loan, but he created this partnership with this kid, and they created a partnership, and this guy, he was an investor, sponsored the money that this kid needed. Now he was in the military, so he didn't have to put a lot of money down, but I think they sponsored, like they did some conversions like you're talking about with the doors, and they converted it to like a co-living home. This kid lived in it for a year, and their whole plan was, let's like be partners for 5 years and get 5 homes, and then we'll have like decent cash flow. And this guy that's coming in was going to be all the money. He was the investor, and the other kid was just going to buy primary residences. Have you ever seen something like that? Are there anything somebody should be concerned about that? Because I've I sponsored my brother into his primary residence. I've sponsored some people in, and then I usually work out some sort of a deal in the back end with the cash flow if they house hack it or something like that. What are your thoughts on that?
So I think it's a great strategy, because if there's somebody living in there, you get better financing terms. So if you're the one co-signing for somebody's primary residence, that you as the investor are getting a better interest rate. You get to put less money down, so you're leveraged better. So for example, on a primary residence, if you're a first-time home buyer, you only have to put 3% down. If you're a repeat buyer, you only have to put 5% down. If you're an investor, the minimum is 15% down. And then if you're but at 15% down, you now have a lot of what's called loan level price adjustments. So even though you're putting more down, your rate is still way higher than a primary residence rate. So on that, as long as it's all like legal and on the up and up, I totally support that strategy. If they're like loaning the $100,000 down payment or a $20,000 down payment, and you're not telling your lender that, and there's a back end agreement, like then you can get into trouble. But as long as it's all like, told to your lender and the lender approves and are good, then I love that strategy.
Yeah, that's so cool. So what are some other objections? So down payment is one, right? Of like, hey, how do I get the money? And there's strategies around that if someone's getting into the game. What are some other maybe objections that you hear from someone who's like, Yeah,
I think the biggest one, even above down payment, is monthly payment. And then not believing what I'm going to tell them that they can earn in short-term rental income or house hack income of renting out the room. They're just scared. So for example, in Denver, the average monthly payment is probably around $4,000 if you're buying a house in Denver. And so they're used to, like, the average rental payment is $2,200, right? So you're bridging that gap between, oh my goodness, I'm used to paying $2,200. Now my monthly payment that Danielle's telling me if I buy this house is $4,000. Now they know, or they kind of know, because a lot of my clients are house hackers. They don't, not believe me, but they're just scared that, like, what if it doesn't get rented? Like, what if Danielle's not telling the truth? What if COVID happens again and nobody wants to rent a room? Then they're liable for that $4,000 monthly payment. And so how I've started to handle that, or at least like provide support around it, that my numbers that I'm estimating are accurate, is I have on my Instagram like different client testimonials on what they've been earning, how they've been doing it, how much it costs to like put in an egress window, how much, they're making in Westminster versus Arvada versus Denver prop, just so that I can like point them in the direction of, hey, like, or just like, hey, talk to Katie. She's in an area where you're buying. And a lot of my clients are like, excited to talk about how much they're making on short-term rental. And so it's third party validation, not just me. And I work with a lot of realtors that are also house hackers. So it's not just like, people with skin in the game telling them that they can make money off the house, but just, people that have been doing it or joining like Facebook groups or meetups on talking to different investors or house hackers that are doing the same thing to just build that confidence level that they won't have to cover that $4,000 monthly payment solo, that it truly will, be about what they're paying in rent or under.
There will be some money coming in on this thing.
Yeah. Yep.
Some way, shape, or form or another. Yep. Yeah. What is your thought process versus like renting out, kind of house hacking your house a short term versus doing it long term? Meaning like just renting out a long term, a room to someone who needs months or even a year long stay. How did you make that decision for you to say, you know what, I'm going to rent it on Airbnb? Was it just the fact that you thought you could make more money that way? Or actually in Denver, is short-term rentals legal?
It only is legal if it's your primary residence in the city proper. So Denver is my primary residence. Their ordinance states that you need to, it doesn't have a certain day limit, which gets a little bit arbitrary for some people. Like even myself, who I'm on the board for Mile High Host, very active in the short-term rental community here. Like my application got flagged because I was renting out my property more than 183 days. They don't have a 183-day rule. Their ordinance states the place of primary return. So I had to, I spoke up on a STRAC meeting saying, hey, my application's been like 3 months. It's like pending. It is my primary residence. I file taxes here. So they're very, very strict on the primary residence rule in and around the city of Denver. Outside of, sorry, I feel like I'm getting off topic, but outside of the city of Denver, how I coach clients is if you want to be moving every 12 to 18 months and buy the primary, then rinse and repeat, then we're going to look at other areas like Wheat Ridge, Arvada, Westminster, unincorporated Adams, that all have investor-friendly regulations. So when you move out of the house in 12 months, you still can do the short-term rental strategy. Versus if you bought in Denver, you would not be able to. You'd have to go midterm or over 30 days. So the original question you asked me was why short-term versus long-term? I'm 36. I'm single. I don't want a roommate that I have to share my whole house with all of the time. I get to decide when I close those barn doors off and open them. To be honest, I've been short-term renting less in the last year or two. It's more just when I leave my place. Even back in the day when I started, it was nice when my mom and dad came into town. I would block off the dates so that they could stay in my basement. So that's why I liked the flexibility of the house as my house and I'm not sharing my space, which is why I went short term. I also do believe that the profitability is higher on short term, but it was more so a lifestyle choice versus a profitability choice was really what weighed the decision. I actually currently have a long-term roommate that ended up short term. I met him at a digital nomad hostel in Hawaii in March, and he reached out. He was moving to Denver. I gave him a 5-day test out and loved living with him. So he still doesn't have a place. So I gave him till November 1st, and then we're going to reevaluate if I like having a roommate or not.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, hey, you are doing a little bit of co-living in there. I like that.
Yeah. So I love the fluidity of house hacking. So you don't have to start with if you start with having multiple rooms and to different people, you can adjust it at any time. Maybe everybody moves out in a year and you want to travel and then you rent out your whole house while you're gone. That's what I love that home ownership gives you, is the flexibility to make money off of your space that you don't have that opportunity with renting.
And I love how you're just trying to provide people more options, just show them what's possible. All those are different options, renting out your basement or renting out another room in your house. There's a long-term, there's a short-term play to this. And I would guess that because Denver is so strict on this, you having a primary residence in Denver and then having a short-term rental it probably increases demand, I would think, significantly for
Denver is one of the best short-term rent. Denver and Denver area is one of the highest occupancy in the country. We have a 77% occupancy rate. So if I've got a short-term rental in Frisco, Colorado too, which is like more ski town by Breckenridge, that occupancy rate is about 50%. So like 50% of the time, and I actually do a midterm, short-term strategy there too, where I do 6-month long-term lease in the off season because short-term rental is so slow in the summer. And then during peak ski season, I do a short-term rental. So that's why these little cutouts around Denver that are investor friendly are amazing opportunities to invest because of the occupancy, because being primary residence in Denver proper makes guests who fly into Denver don't even really know the difference between Wheat Ridge, because Wheat Ridge is a 5-minute drive to Mile High Stadium or downtown, but Wheat Ridge allows you to be an investor and have a short-term rental.
What if someone says, hey, I like this, Danielle, this is really cool, I'd like to do this, but let's just say they are not single. Let's say they've got kids. Can this strategy or something similar to this work? Maybe a better way to ask this is, how do I take advantage of this strategy, get in, start my investing career with these primary residence loans, which like you're sold on, I'm sold on. It's how I got my first bunch of houses. Like it is an accelerator. I think it was even Warren Buffett who is like, I don't think he was talking specifically about like primary residence loans, but he was just saying the 30-year fixed mortgage in general. He's like, that's the best debt product in the entire world. Like if we could all get short-term, he's like, think about it. If interest rates go up, you're great. If interest rates go down, you refinance. Like you can't lose because it's a so like that's so cool, and I love that you're promoting. But like, what would you say to someone who maybe was like, yeah, I get this, but I got 2 kids and I want to still use a strategy? How do you coach someone through that?
So I do have clients that have children. You have to find a property that makes sense to have a completely separate space. So one is a townhouse. It's a 3 or 4 bed, a 3-bath townhouse. And it's the lower level that is completely separate from the upstairs level. They don't even see, their guests. That's walled off, locked. The only noise transfers between the kitchen and the basement, and then the bedrooms are upstairs. Duplexes is a great strategy. So like Littleton is a suburb of Denver. You could buy a duplex and live in one side with your family and rent out the other one. Accessory dwelling units are becoming much more common. So you live and you buy a single family house with an accessory dwelling unit, or mother-in-law suite, granny flat, or other names for that. So you would live in the main home and have either short-term or long-term tenants in your backyard, completely separate, whole different dwelling from your family. And I promote that for move-up buyers, right? So let's just say husband and wife bought a house in 2019 and their interest rate's like 2.625%. They bought, a 2-bed, 1-bath. Now they have 3 kids. 5 years later, their monthly payment is like super low. Instead of moving up just slightly, why not increase your budget to maybe the $1.1 million house? Have a separate unit that's made like on a single family. If we had a 2-bed, 1-bath accessory dwelling unit, you would be making about $3,500. If we were on a low end, let's just say $2,800 a month. Yeah. And I wasn't prepared with numbers on what your mortgage would be on a $900,000 home, but just essentially like I'm going to say just ballpark, about half of your mortgage is then covered with additional income, versus if you bought that $700,000 move up instead of that $850, whatever it might be, and you have no rental income. And that's the same strategy that I kind of talk through with first-time home buyers that are thinking about buying a condo versus single family house. It's like, okay, you have a $300,000 condo or a $500,000 single family house in Arvada. That $300,000 is a 1-bed, 1-bath that you're solely responsible for. That $500,000 is a 3-bed, 2-bath that you could probably split, and then your investment every month is much less than what it would be if you bought the $300,000 condo. Plus, you've got an asset of $500,000 appreciating on average at about 4.5% versus a $300,000 asset. So I just like to at least provide the scenarios so that clients can make their own decisions. I've got clients that are like, nope, I feel comfortable with the $2,200 monthly payment versus the $3,800 monthly payment, even though I know that I can't make as much money off of it. But I like to at least present that as an opportunity, because that's how when I first got started, I bought outside of my means, and I was able to buy in Wash Park, Denver, which is a great area of Denver, at a higher purchase price than I would have felt comfortable for alone. But I knew I was open to having guests or roommates, etc.
So cool. Well, yeah, this is trippy because it's almost like everybody can be, I almost wanted to say everybody should be hacking at some level, right? But like, because
but my dad would never have strangers in his house. My mom would be like, please, we're going to Europe, but it costs 10 grand. Can we have people that help support this payment? But
I love this. So Danielle, and I hope what the listeners are taking away from this is like, guys, this is actually a mindset. And I want to give an example. I was smiling really big when you were saying this because I kind of want to give a personal example that I honestly didn't even cross my mind before you just said what you said, but I'm going to give you a personal example. So my wife lived in a house on a lake, beautiful house in the suburb of Charlotte, probably $1.6 million house. We are downsizing because it's just big and we get a little cricket crazy. We're moving to a condo in basically like the middle of Charlotte, and we're going to rent this house. But I'm here, Danielle, and I'm like talking to you, and my studio is here, and the lake is here, and I love it, and I have friends over, and it's like this really cool house to show off. So I was literally having this conversation. And guys, anybody listening to this, I'm not sharing this. The story is not about me. It's about the mindset that Danielle is teaching. And I was thinking about this, and I went to my wife the other day, and I said, baby, like, I know we're moving to this condo. So it's a really beautiful condo. It's in the middle of downtown. I said, it's really cool. And I know we're trying to rent this house that we're in. I was like, but I'm trying to think of a way we could have both. Like, what could I do? Because we have a really low interest rate on this home. It's like not even that much the carry costs are not that much. I'm like, what if I could just get this home to break even? And then this could be my office. How cool would it be for this to be my office, right? And I think, and so now I'm trying to brainstorm. I'm trying to pitch to my wife, like, what if we rented it on Airbnb for like 3 days a month at like $1,000 a night? Then like, we might be able to, and this, and like, what else could we do? And could I rent out 2 rooms right? So this idea, Danielle, that I think you're promoting, and frankly, I just wish more people would talk about, is like, how do we get creative to live the lifestyle we really want? Because I want this home. I want to be able to have a home that's this nice to be like, yeah, Danielle, you're coming into town? No problem. I got a home. I don't even live there. Mm-hmm. It's actually my office. Yeah. Or my buddies or my friends. And so I'm just trying to like paint this picture for people of like, and that's what you're saying. You're saying like, yeah, you could buy a $600,000 house, but why don't you buy a $1.3 million house with an ADU? And it might even be less for you on a monthly basis. Am I getting it right? Am I doing it?
You're 100% doing it. And what's interesting is there's studies that have shown that about 50% of millennials are open to the idea of renting out a portion of their home. So that is half of our population and pretty much half of first-time home buyers. But what I'm finding is they don't know how, right? So they're like, okay, I'm open to this. Now what? And so I think that's really interesting on your co-living, because one, it's a brilliant strategy for somebody getting in of, all right, let's look at houses, live with other people. Then if 50% of homeowners are willing to do that, I would argue, the study didn't go into renters, but I would argue 50% of renters, because housing unaffordability is not just for people wanting to buy a house right now. It's also for people just trying to rent. Right,
rent too, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And there's not a lot of opportunities right now to find places that you can co-live.
It's so true. I wanted to read a post that you made on your Instagram, if you don't mind me just reading it. This is a post straight from Danielle's Instagram. It said, times have changed. And then I want you to speak to this and kind of maybe why you posted it. But and you'll drop your Instagram handle at the end so everyone can follow you, because this is awesome. You put out some awesome content on the how. Literally just what you were saying. Like, this is an inspirational episode, but like Danielle puts a lot of content out about how to do this. You said, times have changed. My friend bought a house in Ventura, California in 1997 for $150,000 with a combined income of $50K. All right, that's what your friend. Today, the same house is worth $950,000, but the same jobs only bring in $80,000 combined. No wonder people are frustrated. This is why I teach you how to house hack, where you can live in a home for less than you're paying in rent and get the equity growth to someday not have to rent. Yeah, tell us a little bit about how you process. So that's crazy, obviously. Like, what stands out to you about that, and what why did you make that post? I guess is really what I want to ask.
Yeah. So I think what stands out to me is home ownership changes lives. This is a similar example, but my grandpa has owned a farm for over 120 years. The same family has worked on the farm and they've never bought land. They've never bought a house. They had to move away from that area because they could no longer afford to live there. Yet our little empire is growing because he kept buying land and buying houses, et cetera, which is a different example. So this California example is the same thing. When you get in, you're like going back to your 30-year mortgage, your monthly payment is the same. Rents continue to rise. It's going to push you out eventually. If for 24 years, you just are throwing $2,000 a month away and then it increases every year, one, you're not paying anything to yourself. It's just literally trash. Like you never get that money back. It's not, maybe your security deposit in the end. But when you buy, one, even if that house payment is higher, your monthly payment is the same and it might only be higher for 10 years. And if you're house hacking, then it's not even higher because somebody else is paying that. Plus part of that monthly payment is principal reduction, which is going to yourself. Then let's just say you put 5% down on the house, but the house is, and I look at house values, like I look at milk, sandwiches, anything. If you go back to your high school days, right? And your parents gave you lunch money. Do you remember how much lunch money you got as a kid?
I was homeschooled, so this is probably not the best example for me, but yeah.
I got like $5 a day in lunch money. So I got like $20 a week and that had to like last the week. Imagine if my parents gave me $20 today, how much that would afford. Not
Chipotle,
like literally
Chipotle one time.
1.5 meals.
Yeah.
So that is inflation in a broken down, minor terms. That your houses are doing the same thing as every other commodity that we're living with it. Like $5 today is not as much money as $5 was in 2006 when I graduated high school. Your home value is going to be doing the same thing. And so the sooner you get into it, the sooner you get that appreciation gain. Now, can we say that homes are going to continue to appreciate all the time? We don't have a crystal ball, but if we look at the 80-year average, in the last 80 years, house values have only gone down 8 times. And the majority of those times are through the housing recession of 2008. And that was due to predatory lending. Anybody with a pulse could get a mortgage. There was no income checks, no asset checks. Like now that's why a mortgage, you have to give away your firstborn child to get approved pretty much. Yeah, I mean, not really, but it takes a lot more work. It's 30 days and we investigate everything because we want to make sure that you're able to pay that back. And so home prices will continue to go up. We might have little blimps of declines here and there, but if you're not a flipper, investor that you're just looking for short-term gains, you're going to be fine.
Yeah. So powerful. So Danielle, let's kind of bring this to some nuts and bolts here for a second. I want you to walk through like 2 to 4 steps of the how. So I think if I was a listener listening to this, I'd be fired up right now. I'm excited. This makes sense. But walk me through like, where do I start? Do I like call a lender first? Do I call you first? Do I call a realtor first? Like, talk me through, like, give me a little step-by-step system for somebody listening to this that's like, and by the way, if someone's listening to this and they're an investor, right? And they're like, well, this doesn't really relate to me. I always think that there's like 2 reasons you're hearing anything. Number one, this may apply to you, what Danielle is saying. If you're listening to this and it doesn't directly apply to you because you've already bought your primary residence and you're just looking to invest the cash you have, then like maybe you need to be either helping someone do this or teaching this to someone. There's probably someone in your life that needs this. I know I'm an investor. I got a bunch of homes. My wife and I have a bunch of homes, but like I'm thinking of like 3 or 4 people right now. I'm like, man, I need to be pushing them. Like even after hearing you, Danielle, I'm like, I need to be pushing them to get a home. Like they're renting. Right? I got this one friend, Austin, and his wife. I'm just like, man, he keeps renting. And I'm like, dude, you need to buy a home. You can. He could qualify. He could use everything you're learning. So I'm going to send him this episode, actually, when I'm done. Austin, if you're listening to this, then like, this is for you, buddy. Doing this whole episode. but talk us through, give us some like step-by-step, give us a step-by-step guide to really getting this journey going. Give us some how. Yep.
I would say the first thing you need to do internal, like journaling, or what do you want? What are you comfortable with? Like, are you comfortable with roommates? right now? Or do you like, what strategy do you want to pick? And if you don't know the strategies, I do a free webinar that it's house hacking and home ownership, how to have someone else pay your mortgage payment. That it just like walks you through the different types of strategies, kind of like we did on this podcast too.
How do they get that? How do they get that thing? That's through your...
Yeah, they can DM me on Instagram, Danielle Anderson _loans. If you just DM me on Instagram, I'll shoot you the link.
And we'll link that in the show notes and all of that as well, guys.
Okay, perfect. So I would just kind of like think internally, what is it that you want? Like you're open to have, like, are you open to having people live with you or are you not? Do we need to get an ADU, single family with an ADU or not? If you're don't even know what the strategies are, I think that's calling somebody like me, or going to meetups, Googling house hacking 101, starting to read books. That's first step, right? Just like understanding the strategy. Step 2 is meeting with a lender. And if you don't like your first lender, meet with another lender. If you're not working with a house hacking lender or somebody doing what you want to do, I would say get with a lender that does what you want to do, because they can provide insight that other lenders cannot. Like other lenders are just running your numbers and just shooting it out.
Why lender before realtor?
I would say a lender before an agent is because you don't want to fall in love with something or want to buy, but you can't. Yeah. And I would say to all my self-employed people, you think you make a lot more money than you really do on paper. So self-employed is even more important to share your tax returns with the lender so that you are shopping well within your means, or you know that there's added costs to doing different types of financing like business bank statement loans or asset reduction loans, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, yeah. That's awesome. That's super cool. So first, like, know your strategy. Step 2, so know your strategy, journal about what you're comfortable with. You might not be comfortable with living in you might be like, hey, I'm fine if someone's in my basement, but they have to have a separate entrance. I don't want them coming through my house, right? I'm fine with an apartment above a garage because then I don't really have to ever see them. And if I do, it's like out my window, right? Like that's kind of what you're saying, right?
And maybe I guess the first step is really just getting familiar with what strategies there are. And then our job as industry professionals is like asking you the appropriate questions to dial in that strategy. And then I would say work with a lender and a real estate agent.
Third step, get an agent.
Get in touch with an agent that knows. Like a house hacking agent or an investor agent is different than just a regular primary agent. Now they could do both, but they definitely need expertise. So the first thing that you're going to look for in an agent, and like for me, I might work with different agents, but like I'm the industry expert in the Denver area of like, oh, if you want to move out in 12 months, you can't buy that house. That's Denver proper. Like it doesn't align with your strategy of what you want to do. So rules and regulations is probably the first thing that you're looking for on identifying the areas that you can buy, where you want to buy. So understanding, what are the Nashville area regulations or the Denver, like wherever you're looking to buy, you might not be able to do what you want to do if you don't want a roommate. Like I didn't want a roommate. I can short-term rent as long as it's my primary, and I can't move out of this house ever and short-term rent. So as long as you're okay with that, you just have to know the rules. And
a good, like, investor-friendly agent would be the person, probably like a realtor, an agent would be the person to tell you that.
And I would even my strategy is house hacking, so it's different than investor, because investor is looking for like cash flow. House hacking and investors are a little bit different because like I'm in West Wash Park, Denver, which is a very high-priced area. If I'm investing, I probably wouldn't actually invest here because the returns would be lower. But as a house hacker, it's the area I want to live with properties that allow me to, so it actually is two different agents between investors and house hackers, possibly.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Yeah. And so even if you're not ready right now, like even if you're like, oh, I have negative debt or I have a 550 credit score, I think so many people are worried to talk with us about like wasting our time. My job is to put you on a plan of how it's possible. So even if it's a year out, 2 years out, you're just thinking about it right now, that is not too soon to talk to a lender. Now, we might not be pulling credit, or if we are, we're just doing a soft credit pull because we're not like putting an offer in the next 4 months. But I can at least be like, okay, if you pay off these 2 credit cards, we save up X amount of money. This is a monthly payment range. Like we can get you onto a plan to make that dream a reality.
That's super cool. Okay, so to recap, I'm gonna journal. I'm gonna get familiar with the strategies. I'm gonna understand that. I'm gonna reach out to a lender first to kind of get my price point, to understand where I'm yeah, I don't want to go and try to buy something that is not even with my price points. I'm going to get pre-approved from a lender. And can you refer people out to different lenders like around the nation? You can actually lend in multiple
Yeah,
states.
my team does loans in all 50 or sorry,
Right.
49. We don't do New York.
Okay.
So yeah, I would be happy to put them in touch with different lenders on my team anywhere.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I concentrate in Colorado, but somebody from my team can help in other places.
Super cool. So I get the lender, I get what my price point is. I go shopping with an agent, and then just like kind of keep talking me through that for a second. Like I want to kind of bring this to like where I'm living in this thing. So I've got that. I start looking at homes. I'm calculating my strategy. Yeah, go for it.
So your lender will give you a cost sheet of like, okay, if you're looking at, and at the start, I'll do like $500, $600, $700,000. I mean, we're in the Colorado market, so it could be 200, 300, 400 in different places of the country. But of, whatever price point that the client is looking into. So you can kind of see the differences in that area. I run something called AirDNA, which is going to project rental income. Now for house hackers, it's not exact. So I'm using that with my own industry knowledge of what my clients are generating across the city, because AirDNA is mostly for whole house rentals and more for your primary investors to get an aggregate of short-term rental income projections. So I'm using about 65% of what they project, because most of my clients are shared space. Like they've got a door, but it's a single family house with a basement. It's a little bit different than a condo whole house. So I'll run that. So that way you can kind of start thinking of like, okay, in a $500,000 house, this is what like my portion of that payment is going to be. So I'm going to show you that. Then we get clear on which areas. Your agent is going to set you up on a search of homes in that particular price point and in that particular area, and that area that allows to do what our strategy, is. Then really, in that time frame, I think people are shocked that can be, 30 days between the time that they talk to a lender and they're under contract on a house and ready to close fairly quickly, or I mean, even quicker than that. Now, other people take longer to find a house that they love. So then you go out and you shop with your agent, and a good agent is going to know the rules and the regulations. They're going to know what you can and can't have in a house. Like in Denver, if you have 2 kitchens in a house and you want a short-term rent, that's actually bad because that changes the laws. So looking at, what was that?
It's nuanced, right? It's
very nuanced. Yeah. If you're long-term renting, no big deal, but short-term renting, bigger deal on the ordinance of short-term rentals to get that upon renewal. So then you go out and that could be a weekend and you fall in love with the house, or that could be 2 months that you're out shopping for the home that you love, or 6 months or a year, however long it takes you. Then once you find a house, then you're under contract. You kind of come back to the lender to redo the analysis on monthly payment and cash to close and how much that's going to be. And then really closing is about 30 days. You get an appraisal, you get an inspection, all of those things throughout that 30-day process. And then you're in your new house.
You're in your new house, you've closed, and you're renting it out. You're making cash flow, right?
Yep. Then you're going to hire a professional photographer.
Yeah. Interesting. Tell us about that. Tell us about that a second.
Yep. I think that those are the 2 most important things for really any rental. I think even if you're doing the rent by the room strategy, I don't know, tell me if you do that on 100%, yours.
100%.
Okay.
Get the biggest photos you possibly can, right?
Yep. I think it's the biggest return on investment that's your first impression to anybody looking at your listing, no matter what platform you're on, whether you're Furnish Finders, Craigslist, anything. So you're going to be able to get more money per room or more money per listing or higher occupancy rate if your place is very well designed. And if you're great with, you have a great eye, then you probably don't need an interior designer. I don't. My whole house is interior. My interior designer did everything. I would never have green doors, but I love them. But I think those are the biggest things to get high occupancy and higher nightly rates is professional photography and interior design.
Yeah. So don't skimp on that. We call it, in co-living. I was just talking about some students with this. I was like, look, one of the biggest mistakes I see in co-living is people just not making the product awesome. And the product is what people are coming in to see. So I could not agree more with that. Danielle, I just want to commend you. I think that I really wish I work with a lot of investors who are into a strategy similar to this, right? But I wish there was more people like you promoting the ways that people can get into this and how quickly they can start. I mean, I love that you even said it could be 30 days. Like, guys, this could be like your lease could be up in 2 months and you could deep dive now.
Yeah, by 2025, you're owning a house and living in it for literally what you're paying in rent.
Yeah.
And if you don't think it's possible, that's what I'm here to show you that it usually is. So I think that's the biggest obstacle that most people is they just don't think it's possible. And so that's where you have to take the first step and just make that phone call, send that DM, send that text of like, hey, this is my situation. Can you just look into it? Like, can I?
And there's like all these other benefits of homeownership that we really need to even cover. We don't have a ton of time to cover them, but like, I think it's like, once that home becomes an investment property, then there's like all these tax benefits. And now you're starting to pay a little less in taxes because you're depreciating that home as after you move out and it's an investment property. But like, that's something we didn't even really touch on, but that's really, really, really cool. And, can save you tens of thousands of dollars in taxes over the time you own that home.
Yeah. I mean, whether you're an investor or just like, so, okay, when you buy a new house, what do you have to buy? If you came from a 1-bedroom apartment and you're buying a 3-bedroom house, then you have 2 more mattresses, probably a couch for the downstairs, curtains, bedding, all of that. So as a house hacker, that is now deductible.
Yeah, that's cool.
So even if it's not a long-term strategy, like even if it's just like, hey, let's recoup our down payment costs and do it for the first year. Well, then you got a tax write-off that makes so much sense to have a listing in the first place. Even if you don't continue it all the time, at least you get all of the tax benefits from that first year of all of those input costs to get the listing up and running.
That's super cool. Yeah, that's actually a really good point. So we touched on like there's tax benefits. We touched on appreciation. I guess you did a really good job of just sharing like, hey, these are commodities that all go up in value. Like, let's take advantage of that. You also touched on the principal pay down. I just want to recap it for people to really lock this home as we wrap this up. But like, hey, I call it the forced savings plan. It's like your lender is basically forcing you to save every month because you're putting a little bit towards the equity of that home, right? You're paying it off a little bit by little bit. And just the fact, I always love this example. Someone told me this once, Danielle, they said, if you walked into like your banker, you're a lender. So if I come to you and I say, Danielle, I want to buy $500,000 worth of Apple stock and I need a loan for that. I've only got like, I don't know, 20K. Can you give me a loan for the other 480K? You're going to be like, ha, no, like go find all the money. But if I come to you and I'm like, I have a house and I want to live in it, then you're like, we're in business now. We're talking. You're figuring out you're getting creative about how I can get that loan. And it's just funny because Apple's literally considered the best company in the entire world. Like the entire world. And I cannot get a loan for $500,000, but a $500,000 house?
No problem. Yeah. As long as it appraises and it looks like a good asset, like we're going to give you, yeah.
Yeah, so you guys,
and not even that, we're going to give you 95% of the loan, and you only come in with 5% of it. Yeah. So leverage is huge.
Yeah, so you're using other people's money to start your investing. Your leverage. So it's just so freaking cool. Danielle, I could talk to you for another hour here about this, but I want to go ahead and give you an opportunity to tell them kind of if someone wants either coaching from you or support from you or loan from you or just to kind of run a scenario by you, how do they get in touch with you? What's the process for that? And anything you want to say about how people can reach you?
Yep. I would say Instagram is probably my best I'm on there. I answer DMs. Danielle Anderson _loans is my Instagram handle. If you're not on Instagram, I have a website that's the same, just without the underscore, DanielleAndersonLoans.com. And my email is Danielle Anderson, my email is Danielle@DanielleAndersonLoans.com as well. So happy to help in any way.
Super cool. We'll put all those in the show notes so people just have that and they can click on that and go that. So go to the description, guys, and grab that as well. Danielle, this has been super fun. Thank you so much for your wisdom. Thank you so much for being an advocate for this. I feel like something maybe we didn't touch on, but just like, I do believe this strategy that you're promoting is helping solve affordable housing too. I think it's getting people in, and that I think is one of the biggest crises we face today. So I think it makes this like a very pertinent, like relevant thing to people who are just trying to find housing. We didn't even talk about it from like the renter side, like, you can provide something pretty cool, like the guy who's living with you, like he gets a great place to live when who knows, he may not be, like, it might be harder for him to find a place. So I think, like, on both sides, this is kind of like a really cool win-win. What's your final piece of advice for people as we kind of wrap up here? What's your final piece of advice for people who are considering this, or maybe they're on the fence about jumping in and starting something like this?
I think my final piece of advice is that doing something out of what you're comfortable with is always scary, but typically if you take a risk, you have a bigger reward. Now you have to do it with intention and thought out. Like, I don't want you to have a monthly payment that is way outside of your comfort level, but if you do the research, you can get to where you want to go. I think it just starts with action. So taking action, I think so many people just sit there on analysis paralysis going, oh, I want to do this, but I don't know how. Like, start just with something small. Sign up for an investor group or a house hacker group and go to a meetup. Start by sending a DM to anybody, whether it's me or Sam or, for a resource. Start by talking to somebody that's doing it. So just take small action to get to where you want to go. You don't have to get there overnight, but the little things that you do will create that plan moving forward and propel you forward.
I love it. Well said. Danielle, thank you so much for being on the show and bringing your wisdom here. I really appreciate you.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Sam. Take care.
Boom. Once again, solid episode. Super grateful Danielle came on. She is just so generous with her time, giving her personal information out. She responded to her DM. So if you know someone that needs to get in touch with her, please go ahead, use her, leverage her knowledge and her expertise and her wisdom and just her example of what she's even doing. I love that she's living and walking the talk and not just preaching this as theory, right? I try to bring people on here that are like, they're in it, guys. These aren't just theoretical people trying to sell you something. These are people that are walking the talk, living it, going through the ups and the downs of this journey and sharing with you from real experience. So hope you enjoyed this episode. Share it. Like I said at the beginning, share this with 3 people that you need. If it's for you, go apply it. If it's not for you, go share this with a couple of people that really, really, really need to hear this and get into the game. God bless you guys. We'll see you on the next episode.